And that's different. I mean, a power structure that's had complete control is now losing, and you can see that the world financial system does not like to lose control, and how this sneaky little Bitcoin can come in and in a peaceful way be part of its uprooting. I'm just astounded. I'm sitting here in awe. I'm like the person who was watching the great big plasma lightning carve the Grand Canyon. That's one thing about us as humans. We tend to grow what we want where we should not grow it. And so one thing about the GSM is I do see there being farming practices changing, because when we grow what grows where we're at, then things work a lot better. So yeah, when we grow things where we should grow them, life works a lot better. Like here in Arizona, if you just leave the desert alone, it creates so much food. So if you were to cultivate deliberately mesquite trees, they make a very protein, very protein-rich, carbohydrate-rich flour from the pods. And you can go out there and spend, it would only be an investment of a few hours a week to have a month's worth of mesquite flour that would keep you going. And you got the prickly pears, and you've got agave root. I mean, really, it looks barren, but the high desert out here, it is a rich food source. So it seems like a lot of our farming practices and the disasters we might have from a GSM are basically because, well, we were living drastically outside of harmony with nature in the first place.
Yeah, again, local. And again, when you're choosing your seeds, if you're going to grow something, choose the seeds for your local area. Because again, the seasonality of them too will make a difference, because our lettuces right now are just flowering and just off the hook because it's cooled down. There's a lot of mist and it's really foggy these last couple of days. And the last couple of weeks, the temperature came down. All the lettuce took off. But before, it was a little too warm for it to grow. So it was, I wouldn't say it was burgeoning lettuce, but it was growing, but it wasn't like wow. But here again, we're wow again, because when we started growing last year, we got to this wow phase, and anything you put out there, leafy green during these next 3 months, just is wow, to the uber. But again, we got specific plants for this part of the island here, or seed strains for northern Taiwan. Because if you were to go take this down in the Philippines or into Thailand or something, it wouldn't grow there, because it's just, we're right at the edge of a different climatic zone up here at 25 north. And that split between 23 north and 27 north is a hugely different split between that temperate zone of 27 north and 23 north. That the range in temperature is gigantically different. So, choosing local plants, talk to your nursery, what's growing where you live. What about the seeds that were picked? Like if you're going to grow something, I would think getting seeds from something that's already right there growing would be good to take to your house like a couple blocks down, because it's already there growing, versus even buying seeds from like a distributor that might get something from Florida and then you bring it over to Tennessee, or you bring it out to Arizona. It might not grow the same, but if you got something very specific, like if I get some seeds in Tennessee, they're going to grow there well, because that's where they're already at. Even that microclimate of half a degree difference or something, a degree difference, the moisture, everything's going to be a little bit different than where the seeds are actually plucked from locally and then replanted in that same area. So
it's the time of the neo prepper, like the new prepper, I think of it, because people have been prepper minded for quite some time. Well, maybe for forever they have been, but the GSM creates a certain type of prepper, and it's a little different than the normal sort of soldier of fortune prepper, where they're out looking for local seeds. Because that's something I would encourage people to do is what do you like to eat? Does it grow where you live? And then find those local seeds. And even if you can't, start with organic seeds and grow, and you'll find that seeds acclimate to a zone, to an area. And then every year that you grow them, they will get better. And it's really a forgotten thing. We don't really think about it as much as at all, but as much as we used to, is where I remember when I was farming, we would you find the best tomato plants and you get the seeds. You find the best pumpkins and you keep the seeds. And so you would sell a lot of it, but of course you let some go to seed, the nicest ones, then you would take those seeds and you plant them the next year. And so every year you actually improve what you're growing. It likes to stay in one zone. So we do live in a reality where seeds are created in California and then grown in Florida. and it's a challenge. Like you're saying, they may work, they may not, but definitely acclimated seeds are the best. And it's a fun thing to do every year, harvest your best seeds, your best plants, and then the following year they're going to be hopefully even stronger and better. So it is a harmony with nature. Well, it makes me think about the book Magnetic Reversals and Evolutionary Leaps by Robert Felix, because we are going through, it does appear, and you're probably more knowledgeable about it than I am, but we're going through the photon belt, and that takes like every 10 to 12,000 years we go through one of those big dusty arms of the universe, kind of, and there's a lot of conjecture as to what that means. Is that something that you're aware of, that you're following, that the evolutionary leaps that we may be going through right now?
Not to the photon band, but those energetic blasts that if we lose our magnetosphere, we get these, giant, off the hook, almost visible amounts of bombardment of cosmic rays, if you want to put it for another way. Something so far off the charts, something much like this micronova here, but in a cosmic ray fashion without the actual particles. That changes instantly. Evolutionary. So the next baby born is not a human anymore. It's something remotely close or different. Maybe it's covered in hair, maybe it's not. Maybe it has 6 legs, maybe it doesn't. But whatever, we find all these gigantic leaps in evolution. And that's Robert Felix's book, by the way, great read, The 3-City Tour. And Extinction Rebellion interrupted our meeting when we were in Glastonbury. It was myself and Piers Corbin, the astrophysicist Piers Corbin. He and I were having a venue in the Glastonbury Town Hall, along with Sandy Adams and Mark Windows. There were 4 of us speaking there because Mark runs his podcast, Windows on the World program. And Piers, this is the funniest thing. Piers is showing a picture of the sun with the planets and trying to explain the electromagnetic coupling from the sun to the earth and out to Jupiter and further out. And the Extinction Rebellion people came in yelling, "You're lying, you're lying. Why are you telling people lies?" And there's a picture of the sun with the planets up there. It's like this kind of thing. They didn't even know really what we were talking about, but we ended up, myself and 4 other guys pushing them out, and we're like, "This is not your place. You didn't pay for the ticket." And they're just screaming, "I'm not going to pay for lies." I was like, "Well, it's a paid event. You can pay or you don't. You don't like the music from X, Y, or Z artists, you either pay or you don't. Whether you like it or not, it's a paid event. It says paid, and we even, I think it's important to network with people and get interviews and talk to people and share ideas, because each time I hit one of these different kind of events, I learn so much. It's not about me going to present or talk. It's about what I absorb when I'm there from all the other speakers, like Robert Felix. And the way he explains the evolutionary leaps and how this thing works with the cosmic ray bombardments and these gigantic missing pieces from the next species, as if it happens in a blink of an eye. And everything's then suddenly readjusted to the new energy signature or conditions on the planet, and they thrive.
Yeah, there's really something to it, because, as many who are aware, who are listening probably, or if not, well, we'll reference your book, and people can start there and also start following your YouTube, and they'll definitely learn about these things quickly. But as our sun is raging when it's at its maximum, we have a nice barrier between us and cosmic rays and such. But when the sun, like during a GSM, Grand Solar Minimum, starts to relax for a while, then basically the door is open and we have cosmic rays just bombarding our planet. And cosmic rays may sound a little cosmic, but no, it's science. They're very, very real. And it is really something I'm sensing. I think a lot of people are, that I know, that we are in the midst of a evolutionary leap. And I think Robert Felix's book, Magnetic Reversals and Evolutionary Leaps, and we're definitely going to talk to him. Who's not seeing evolutionary leaps entering the planet right now, starting to happen? Like a huge one that I'm seeing is cryptocurrency. That to me is an evolutionary leap. That didn't exist until, 2010 or something like that. You could say it's the beginning of Bitcoin, and that's fine. It existed then, but Bitcoin is really on the forefront, and we have our government, to say the Trump admin exactly did this is not totally accurate, but one of the people who was in the admin at the time, admitted saying that yes, we introduced futures into the Bitcoin market to subdue the price because it wasn't what we thought it should be. Basically, they actually admit it to
Market
something
manipulation.
horrendously illegal. Like if any normal person had done that, they'd be, in federal prison. But they can actually come out and say jokingly, yeah, we crashed an economy, we bankrupted all kinds of people, caused all kinds of suffering, because, well, because we can. But there really is a tremendous amount of people I'm noticing who are waking up because of cryptocurrency. Many people, they get in for the quick gains, maybe they get in to get rich quick, but then they learn about it. And so I'm seeing an incredible consciousness rising, like I've never seen it before, who are aware of central banks, who are aware of that really fiat currency only exists because of a monopoly of violence that a country has to enforce its value. And it is amazing to see how that evolutionary leap is taking place. And it truly is a peaceful revolution. It just is. Just people have knowledge and they're beginning to live differently. They're beginning to see currency different, and they're beginning to see their governments different. They're going, wait a second, you've been pushing this fiat currency thing. You've been manipulating markets. Wait a second, I've been a pawn in your game for a long time, and I can go from just getting by to actually beginning to invest in and create wealth just by the knowledge that I have and how I think through this evolutionary leap that is taking place. So it seems like rather than live at sort of a poverty, just getting by level, people are beginning to understand how, hey, I can have wealth. I can create wealth. Maybe it's only $1,000 of wealth a month, but I can begin to create real wealth rather than just be a wage slave. And that is an evolutionary leap, I think. I think when we look at the currency wars, America is dead set on having the dollar above all else, above all others. And that's, I guess, something you can say the Trump admin has done well, but they're off balance. You look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, you look at the S&P 500, you look at the Russell 2000, they're pumping so hard, it's nuts. Our market just has to retrace. And when it does, it's going to be an interesting world. So anyway, that's a bunch of babble I just did. But how are you noticing evolutionary leaps in consciousness?
Yeah, I am. The first thing that most people would just notice that something's wrong, or something, they feel like a skittishness around the planet, and everybody in every country and every continent feels it. Just something's different right now, but nobody can really pin it to a single. You're telling me that there's 21 uprisings across the planet against the current government structure in terms of debt and payment and food pricing and transportation and fuel costs at the same week. Last week when the KP index was down to zeros, when all these things flared off. I don't know if anybody was watching the KP index last week, but it went down to zero for a couple days. And this is when everything seemed to go, dry bamboo flame off super fast. I think that the magnetic fields of our brains and the human itself is affected by these very low solar wind or no solar wind indices that have an effect directly magnetically on our minds. And that's no joke. When you look at the physiology of the human brain, why can we only stay in space for a certain amount of time? Why do they have to have artificial this and this around the heads? And because, magnetically, our brains are very sensitive to different magnetic changes. So if the magnetic field of our Earth changes, magnetic field on our sun changes, energetic particles not coming our way to ground us, what's going to happen with us? And the Bitcoin as well. I mean, we had the technology back in the middle 90s to run Bitcoin. So I don't know why it took an extra 15 years for that thing to come out. But now it's coming where, this whole debt system has run its course, where there's no more debt. I mean, you could try to create it through the developing world to get them to bring on debt, but it's just not happening fast enough. They need a full reset. Because if there's a full reset, everything can start from zero, and then it's everybody at the same time again, versus trying to focus in on a bunch of developing nations where half the population's living on $1 a day. Very difficult to put debt into that system. because nobody's ever going to take that risk. And it's very, even in medium wage, if somebody who's making $20,000 a year at a very minimal level compared to $1 a day at $365 a year, where are you going to insert debt into? There's only so, living, if you were born in the United States, you won the lottery when you were born, because a lot of places I've traveled, over half the planet lives on $1 a day or $2. I'll be generous. More than half the world's population lives under $2 a day. And everybody's squibbling and quabbling about they're not making 200 grand, 500 million bucks a year in the States. Why don't you go elsewhere and see what it's like? And then to understand how the whole debt cycle works and this whole competition phase, we don't really need it. If everything was automated with technology and we had technology doing most of the work of what humans were doing, but so we've already set it up where we need these labor jobs. So when technology comes in, it displaces humans, creates the problem because we're in this debt system. If it was technology to serve us without the debt, we would be in a wholly different place. So I think that this transition period here between the debt system that needs to be reset into a functional economy that still has tradable value, that has something that we can exchange between peers. This is why crypto is being put out right now during the downturn of the high food pricing and all these changes in society, electromagnetically, financially. And you have to think about it in these different ways too, where society, there's going to be a huge population migration during these times. But people are going to still, fiat's not going to work so well during this transition phase of this current iteration of our, existence on the planet. And I don't believe it's a 400-year cycle. I believe it's a far, far, far more powerful cycle, something on the 2,000 to 4,000 year cycle, which is really going to upset the cart here. So fiat's not going to work. Debt systems at the end, they're really at the very end of the end. Like you can't even inflate anymore because you can't have that. They're at the 0 point of, extruding more debt. Again, like look at all the quirks happening at the moment. If you start to look at all the dots that you can connect, marijuana legalization for possibly new crops, maybe sedation of a population, all this stuff that's going on with this clown land socialist movement and like all these things that are just wasting everybody's time, but they get millions of people caught up in not thinking about the real problems of our society, but thinking about what you should call somebody. It's ridiculous on where the energy is flowing when we could be using this to build our societies and transition for these changes. But now we have a new monetary system unveiled in the exact same moments. So keep everybody distracted, put in a new money system, and let everything go to chaos. And wow, who's going to be the winner of that if you're going to put in the futures market? Central banks are going to try to control it. I think that's why they put the futures market out there to stop it, because the central banks were not in control, but now the central banks are far in more control of the cryptocurrency markets than they were when it organically rose. So they crushed it enough to where they could gain some control, and now it's going to run again. And I firmly believe it is going to run 2.0 just around the corner. Although I've said that for 6 months, 2.0 just around the corner.
Oh yeah, no, it is around the corner. These things are very hard to see, because when you zoom out on, let's say, Bitcoin, because that's what most people are familiar with, and it is the main store of value when it comes to crypto. I'd say it's the main store of value. The gold standard is Bitcoin. If you zoom out, you can see it's been on an upward trend since its creation. It's been on a rocket ship to Pluto since it first hit the ground. And we interviewed, I forget his name. Oh, I'm terrible at that. But the guy, one of the creators of Bitcoins and Friends, and we interviewed him about, Bitcoin. It's a great animated series to watch, Bitcoin and Friends. If anybody wants to get a real feeling of what is blockchain, like I don't know what is Bitcoin, watch that series. It's a couple episodes are out, and you really get a deep understanding of what is crypto, how did it happen, how did Bitcoin come to exist. But the awareness right now, that to me is a huge evolutionary leap, in that I think that crypto was not there, and now it is. It's electronic. It's very, the blockchain, you can say also, and then cryptocurrency, Bitcoin specifically. Then of course there's all kinds of utility tokens. It's a whole different way of storing value and also registering assets and such, and having smart contracts where the contract between several different parties is written in a blockchain, and each step of the way, when people sign off, then the money moves. So people can't cheat on contracts. It's an amazing time. And the awareness that I'm seeing, it just really astounds me because almost everyone in crypto, and there's more and more people in crypto all the time. I mean, since I do crypto for a living at the moment, I have people always ask, how do I get in? How do I start? I just want some Bitcoin. What do I got to do? And it's a whole different mindset because you can't, like, it's almost, people talk about gateway drugs. Crypto really is a gateway drug to understanding how the banks work, how the governments work, how debt works, how we are. I think there is an evolutionary change happening, and a reset, which sounds awful, a financial reset. It isn't. It's so good. Yes, it's disastrous. It is. But if you're like the neo prepper, I guess you could say, then you're invested in things that are going to pump. You're going to, that's the thing. Through the next financial downturn, rather than bad people getting wealthy, bad people can lose their ass, and common people who are good-hearted human beings, like Sasha Stone says, people of the living soil, they
Yeah.
can basically just watch their wealth increase. And that's different. I mean, a power structure that's had complete control is now losing, and you can see that the world financial system does not like to lose control, and how this sneaky little Bitcoin can come in and in a peaceful way be part of its uprooting. I'm just astounded. I'm sitting here in awe. I'm like the person who was watching the great big plasma lightning carve the Grand Canyon and carving a picture of it. When I see what's happening with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin especially, I'm just like, I got to figure out how to carve this. I got to.
BTC on the wall.
They're going to be like, what was this BTC? What was this B with little dollar sign lines through it that people were carving on sidewalks and buildings?
It was a religious symbol. Yeah, but you think about it too, vibrationally speaking, a lot of these old heavy institution top-down types of control mechanisms, with the new the vibration frequency and the energetic changes, I just don't think they're going to be able to hold state any longer. Maybe this is, they also know the evolutionary leap is here and they have to deal with it, because the old ways, we saw now notice this again, when we talk about the bottom of the Yuga cycle, coming out was in the late 1500s, early 1500s coming out. And remember the church and the way that society was controlled with the serfs. I mean, it was brutal, and you were controlled and owned, and there was no in between. But something happened vibrationally and energetically where people said no more, and then there was Magna Carta 100 years later. And then people said no more, and then slavery stopped. And then people said no more, and then there was equality in many different ways and shapes and forms that we still have today. But each successive 100 years or so, we come through these transition points where the last old archaic structures, people are like, no more. I mean, obviously, in front of you, we're at that junction point again, because everywhere you look across the planet, everybody's saying no more. Now, it doesn't matter if it's the clown land stuff that people are focusing on in California and across the United States and mootless points there, or real change where people are like, you stole our water, basically. Remember Bechtel down, what was that, in Ecuador? They privatized the water and then jacked everybody's rates 3 or 4x, and then they were like, no. Well, this seems to be happening globally now, where, like I said, 21 different countries have some social chaos because the government programs, the lack of public funds, the tumultuous living conditions and squalor and just poverty that they're ingrained into. And they notice now that there's all this money being held in just a very, very, very few small hands that's keeping them in their predicament. And when they want to raise, and I'll tell you, down in Chile, part of that change down there was a 4-cent rise in the subway fares. And that was enough to push people over the edge, a 4-cent increase. But yes, the fuel prices were increasing and food was going up. And it was just, I think that was the last straw, was the 4-cent increase on the subway fares there. But everywhere you look around, there's energetic changes coming in. You know, what we're experiencing now with energetic changes is only at the super little tiniest cusp of where we're heading into, because maybe it is cosmic rays that actuate all of these changes. And when we come into these low solar activities, it seems to be on the same cycle of like societal giant leaps as well when we come in. But we're coming into something we haven't seen in thousands of years in terms of energetic particles bombarding our planet, the magnetic fields of our brains being affected. What kind of vast changes are on the horizon? They're already occurring. They're not on the horizon. I mean, it's in play right now. It's just, there's massive changes all around us. And I think it's energetically induced as well, not just people wake up one day and say, hey, we've had enough. I think it's energetics.
Yeah, and I'm also noticing people realizing that they don't need to ask permission to live their life. And I think that, once again, I see that happening in cryptocurrency, where people are realizing, wait a second, why can't I have? Because it's like it's this gateway to so much. People are asking, well, why can't I have a private transaction? Why can't somebody give me, some apples that they grew on their trees and I give them $5, or I give them, 0.0001 Bitcoin? I mean, why is a private transaction seen as an act of terrorism, quite literally? And I think that that's waking people up too. They're going, wait a second, it's not that I want privacy because I want to hide anything. It's just ridiculous that I don't. And it goes beyond just, privacy. It's asking permission for every transaction, and then also having it go through a centralized approval, basically. And you look at the hassle of international commerce, of moving, exchanging currencies and moving them, between countries and such. Then you look at a Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other crypto store of value. You can just do your transactions and screw it. You don't need a centralized system for those to go through. They truly are peer-to-peer, person-to-person, and they can even have hard-coded contracts, agreements written into them. We don't need anything else. And it's amazing how everything that the control structure does not like happening, like privacy, like transactions that are private, somehow becomes, we have to watch out for money laundering, for all these horrible things that, it's amazing. So yeah, I think that those systems, the accusation that human freedom itself is an act of, I think that structure is so lame and so heavy. I think I'm beginning to see that that tower crumble from its own weight, just from its lack of foundation, from it's just in general wrongness in the first place.
And to take a look now too, why is there so much KYC AML out there? They want to know where every single dollar is moving around the planet. Like, why is it again? Like right now it's happening. Could have done that 20 years ago. We had the technology, we had wire funds going all over the place. And again, the war on cash, because you saw India happening, right? You saw India, they reduced the larger denomination notes. But I'll tell you one thing, when I was in the UK, I had a stack of 20s that I wanted to get rid of. I wanted to just get 100 or a couple hundreds and travel with it, not have the 20s. And they told me, oh, we don't use 100-pound notes anymore. I said, okay, how about some 50s? And they're like, we rarely use those now too. So I had to go to several money changers just to get 50s. Like they'd have one 50 and one money changer. Okay, it's a money exchange place. That's what they do in the airport, is exchange money. I had to go to 3 different exchanges just to get 50-pound notes. Now, how bizarre is that? And this is in London, of all places, at Heathrow. I'm thinking, come on, really? And then, so the way it is, there's a war on cash. They don't want to have big money to travel around. You look at what they did with the euros as well. They took away the 500, the 200. Now it's really difficult to even break 100. You go through, you have a €100 note, and they look at you, got like 6 heads. Like, I don't have change for that. Are you kidding? You take all my change. Because that's all they're operating on, is like micro cash now across the planet. So there's a war on cash. They want to know where every dollar is, every dollar spent, and they want you to pay tax on your transactions. So if you and I traded fruit for fruit, you got veggie, I got fruit, they still want us to pay tax on the transaction value, which is a little absurd. If I'm going to spend my time and energy to grow a fruit, and you're going to spend your time and energy to grow vegetables, we want to trade that as an even trade. Government has no business at 1 iota in the middle of that. Zero.
Yeah, and they want to make sure that they get that bit of tax, and they also want to make sure that you're asking their permission. It's like no transactions without their permission through them, and those transactions have to be approved. And now we also see max cash transactions. You'll see I can't remember one specifically, but there's been a couple I've seen in the news the last couple of weeks, and it seems to be growing in intensity, where countries are saying, oh, only $6,000 or only $5,000 can be, that is the max monetary transaction or cash transaction that can happen between two entities. Nope, you can't buy a car in cash if you have it. If you have dollars, you can't. You have to buy it, through credit or through, a wire exchange, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very eerie. So I see a huge evolutionary leap there. Because I'll call it the empire is really showing its hand. And I'm definitely seeing an evolutionary leap in consciousness where I really think people are getting it. And I'm lucky to be, working in crypto right now because I see people getting it who never even thought of it. That evolutionary leap is coming in. They were just open, they were aware, and somehow or the other, this energy just hit them, and they went, "Wait a second, I'm not going to ask permission to live.